Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Duval 22 podcast. My name is Gus Logue. This morning I'm thrilled to be joined by JP Acosta of CBS Sports. He is an SB Nation alum, a Big Cat Country alum. Shout out BCC. But we're here to break down Jacksonville's wild card round loss to the Buffalo Bills. Certainly a deflating and kind of sudden end to the season. We've got a lot of listener questions that we'll kind of use to guide us through this podcast because we want to hear from you guys and talk with you guys about the Jaguars. But JP, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. I know you're a busy guy. Just how are you doing? And do you have, before we launch into these listener questions, do you have anything that's like really at top of mind the morning after Jacksonville's season came to an end?
Well, I think initially, after the loss, it sucked. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be so honest. That really sucked, and it's part of the drawback of having a team that goes into the playoffs on an 8 game win streak, one of the hottest offenses in the NFL. The game is moving finally at the speed that you want it to for Trevor Lawrence, and then it all comes to a screeching halt in the playoffs. That sucks, especially in a game that was as close and as tightly contested as it was against the Bills. But I actually, upon watching some of the tape today, I feel a little more confident in this Jaguars team moving forward. I still am of the belief that like you can't just say like, oh, we'll be back next year because we've seen Jaguars teams say, oh, we'll be back next year and not do anything like after, and then you end up in the spot where the Jaguars have been for the last few years. But I do think that even though they lost, I have a little bit more confidence in Anthony Campanelli. I have more confidence in Liam Cohen, and especially this team's ability to respond to adversity. They were down. They came back in that game. They adjusted really well. It just came down to a few bad drops, some bad balls that didn't go your way, like the fourth down that he's a shin short, or like a Cam Little kick that normally he makes that he misses. It's those kinds of margins that like it that's what makes it suck, but that's what also gives you confidence going into next year.
Yeah, I feel like we're never gonna get like a normal Josh Allen game, or at least a like non-dramatic Josh Allen playoff game. It feels like every single postseason game he plays in, it's like it doesn't even matter what happens in the first 57 minutes. It's just like which team is able to make the most plays in the final 3 minutes. And on Sunday, it was the Bills, which is like it's kind of it's like a reason for optimism, I feel like, as frustrating and as sudden as like the loss was, and for it to be early exit in the playoffs after winning 8 straight games, having the best point differential of any team in the NFL going into the dance. It is like I think a lot of people were saying like the winner of the AFC, the team that's going to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, might come down to either the Jaguars or the Bills in this game. Like obviously it's tough going against the reigning MVP, even if he doesn't really have any good true receivers. Like Khalil Shakir is a good receiver. He caught all 12 of his targets for 100% catch rate. But like it felt like 9 or 10, all but 9 or 10 of those were just screens or targets like at or behind the line of scrimmage. And so, yeah, it's tough to go out to a good team, especially in the first round. One thing I think that's interesting is that like a lot of like weaknesses for the Jaguars, kind of like that we knew about even before the season, kind of like reared its ugly head. Like the defense had a good effort, but I feel like just doesn't really have enough horses. Not just like especially on the in the pass rush behind Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen, but really in the defense as a whole. Like Greg Newsome was definitely kind of gone after by the Bills passing offense yesterday. And then the coaching staff, like I think, didn't have the best game plan, didn't have the best game like called game that they had this season, and like as great as they've been this year, like first time head coach, first time offense coordinator, first time defense coordinator, you kind of knew that that lack of playoff experience would probably show up at some point. But yeah, us dive into these listener questions, JP. I think definitely one thing that's on people's minds for sure is Jacksonville's kind of abandonment of the run game yesterday. They finished with 154 rushing yards. Both Travis Etienne and Bashal Tune had over 50. Richard Ito at Rich Ito, Rich underscore Ito on X said, the running game was clearly working. If you had to guess, do you think they just didn't call enough runs or did Trevor check out of them? What do you think about this whole situation, JP?
I think it's a little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think Trevor canned out of a lot of plays, which is, like, yeah, we can say Trevor should stay in those run calls, but during this win streak, what got you there was Trevor canning some of the run plays, and that's what you live and die by your quarterback canning those plays, and that's okay. Again, it's the lack of experience sort of showed up in this game for both the coaching staff and for Trevor Lawrence to just go, you know what, run game's working. Just let the play be because they thought they were getting favorable looks from the Buffalo defense, who had a great like called game on that side of the ball, and they sort of goaded them into taking those deep passes, which were working in the first part in that 8 game win streak. Those deep passes over the middle of the field, they only had two completions of 20 plus yards on Sunday, which is the lowest or the second lowest that they've had since week 11. So they kind of goaded them into taking those deep passes, those downfield, middle of the field shots. But I think some of it was Trevor Canning plays, but where it really showed up and the frustrations really sort of lie to me is in the red zone. It's after the Travis Etienne big 26-yard run to start the second half. You get Brenton Strange pass, QB draw that goes nowhere, and then Tre'Davious White almost jumps a Brenton Strange seam ball. It's those types of moments where these are not like plays you're canning out into. These are designed, these are plays that Liam Cohen is calling, and it's sort of just like, okay, you need to get something going in the run game. You can't call a QB draw at like the 30-yard line. Trevor Lawrence is a good runner. I think Trevor's running ability is amplified a lot more inside the 10. I think he's a high red zone, like you're close to the goal line type of runner. But I think that was sort of where Liam Cohen needs to grow, and he will grow. I think so. But yeah, I think the answer to that question is sort of both Trevor Canning plays and just a lack of red zone rushing attempts.
Yeah, I definitely had a great point for the red zone rushing attempts. I will say the Bills like did a good job of taking away Lawrence's designed runs. Not that that means the Jaguars should have not done them. I kind of thought that like because we'd seen a decent amount of like Trevor utilizing his legs in general, but especially in like high leverage, short yardage situations, e.g. like the red zone. Um, I thought that like we would see something off of that because like clearly the Bills watched those maybe not all 8 games of tape, but they saw the tape and saw that like Lawrence was effective using his legs in those situations. So I thought we were gonna see like a Tebow pass or something like that, basically, where it's like you think he's gonna run and then he like jumps up and passes or like a play call off of that. And I feel like we didn't really see that from Cohen at all in the game, like let alone just like building a cool play call off of this tendency of Lawrence using his legs. Like I thought there was going to be like a Jacoby Myers throw because he was used to play quarterback. I thought there was going to be a quadruple reverse, like something that like Cohen was saving for the playoffs, you know. But definitely credit to the Bills for kind of like stopping the designed run game for Trevor specifically. They obviously did a good job like with those cans and calls for Lawrence. Like it's not like Lawrence was just had his worst game of the year and like was like straight up wrong. Like the Bills did a good job and like forced him into making a lot of errors kind of. And so JP, I'm curious like going forward, do you think there's like an ascension or like development that this Jaguars offense can take in terms of like their pre-snap operation and this play calling? Because like I feel like it almost hurt them the fact that like in this game the Bills knew that they were going to walk up to the line of scrimmage, but then also have a backup play that they could change to at the line of scrimmage. And so the Bills were constantly trying to get them to like switch into the worst play call, basically. And that kind of system is something that Cohen took from Sean McVay in Los Angeles, where it's like you're walking up to the line of scrimmage with multiple options. But now at this point with Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles, it's not just, oh, you have the option between one or two, maybe three plays. Like Stafford has the ability at the line of scrimmage to like pretty much change anything. And so I wonder if like that's kind of like the next evolution that needs to like take place in Jacksonville, or if there's something else that could happen other than like, oh man, Buffalo just did a good job of making them check into the wrong thing. Like, oh well, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is for this, if you're going to keep canning plays, and I think you should continue to give Trevor Lawrence that liberty at the line of scrimmage because that's how a lot of offenses get into favorable looks. And it's unfair to the Jaguars offense to say like never let them call or can plays again because it worked over the last 8 games of the season. We have a large sample size of those plays, those cans working. For me, it's getting them in on time. If you're going to
Mm.
call two plays, get the play in quick and get to the line of scrimmage quick. Maybe that means you do less motion before the snap if you're going to can it, because you see a lot with Jaguars games, they're canning it And when they get to the second play, there's like 6 seconds left on the play clock. And then once you get that, you're hurrying. You're on fire now. Everybody's trying to set protections. They're trying to set the play call, the side adjustments. A lot of stuff is going on within those final 6 seconds that you get a lot of. There was actually a play in the second quarter, in the red zone. It was a couple plays before the 4th and 2, where Trevor cans an under center run, goes to a quick game. I think it was like stick. And they're hurrying to get to the line of scrimmage and like trying to readjust the play. There's 5 seconds left, and he snaps the ball quick. Matt Milano's all over the Jacoby Myers stick route, and it's an incompletion, and it's a batted ball. So it's those types of plays where you're sort of just like, if you're going to continue to can plays, which I think they should, and the next development for Trevor Lawrence should be the post snap adjustments, which
Mm.
is something you want to see from a quarterback in his fifth or sixth year. Like at this point, Lawrence has the ability and the liberty at the line of scrimmage to can plays, to change plays, get them into favorable looks. And if you're going to do that, get the play in quicker. And for Lawrence, I mean, a lot of the development comes with pre-snap and post-snap, making the offense right regardless.
Mm. Totally. Yeah, we've saw that a lot. Like we didn't really see that in terms of like post snap play on Sunday where like Lawrence is like breaking out of the pocket, like creating with his legs and like throwing on a scramble drill, doing like the Superman logo, or not the Superman, the Air Jordan logo, where like neither of his feet are touching the ground. Caleb Williams did the same thing against the Packers. We didn't really see a lot of that, but certainly like there's a lot of playmaking that can happen just like in the quarterback's brain, kind of pre-snap and post-snap of, as you're saying, getting to the right spot, making the play caller right, even if it's not originally perfect. But I definitely think you make a good point in terms of like the speed of the play call and actually getting up to the line of scrimmage. Like one of the many factors that led to Jacksonville's 8 game win streak to close the regular season is that Trevor Lawrence started wearing a wristband. It might have been in the Texans game. If not, it was directly after the Texans game in Week 10. And that's just one thing to help them get calls in quicker and get to the line faster. It wasn't like a reason for panic, like, oh, Trevor doesn't know the plays. Trevor can't remember the plays. It was just like, no, it just makes it a little bit more efficient, gets them to the line a little faster. So definitely goes in line with what you're saying. I think that's a good segue into this next question. Also, shout out to Racist Johnson on Blue Sky for asking about the run game and Tune not getting any more touches after Tune became the first player since Arian Foster in 2012 to have 3 straight runs of 10 plus yards in a playoff game, and then he had 1 touch after that. So that's definitely another just kind of, yeah, you gotta just laugh at it. But Tune will be fun to watch going forward. But I want to stick on Trevor Lawrence, JP. At LF Gene on Blue Sky said, "Do we have a clear and more hopeful picture on Trevor's potential ceiling as a top 5 quarterback with another year of building around him, learning the playbook, sharpening mechanics, etc." And so I'll break that down for you, JP. It's just like, what are your thoughts, takes on Trevor Lawrence entering 2026? Are you happy with what we saw from him over the course of the 2025 season? And I guess also just how do you think he played on Sunday?
So this Trevor Lawrence season was very similar to Baker Mayfield last year with Liam Cohen.
Mm,
They both started off really slow and then ended on a tear. So that gives me a lot of confidence for Trevor Lawrence moving forward. Do I think he can be a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the NFL? I don't think so. But when you get to like with the quarterback pecking order, like anywhere from QB like 6 to like 15 is interchangeable
for
week in and
sure.
week out. Like whoever like is QB 6 or QB like 8 depends on like the week. And I think Trevor Lawrence has played himself into that range. I think the biggest thing for Lawrence is the consistency of ball placement and mechanics. There's difference between accuracy and ball placement. You can put the ball into the area code, but can you get it to the exact phone number? I think ball placement is going to be the biggest thing for Lawrence moving forward because you can tell that with the added confidence of changing plays at the line of scrimmage. Like we spent like 3 weeks marveling over Phillip Rivers, like doing all the stuff at the line of scrimmage for Trevor Lawrence to do the same thing, like
Yeah.
for the last like 2 months of the season at like 25 years old. So he's clearly growing and developing between the ears. Now it's about like streamlining the process and consistently cleaning up the mechanics. And if he can do that, I'm confident in his ability to lead the Jaguars and be a top 10 quarterback because we've seen now what we can do with receivers that sort of fit with each other. You know, you have a receiver that can do sort of dirty work over the middle. You have your guy in third down situations against man coverage in Parker Washington, and you had the verticality in Brian Thomas Jr. And then there's just this weird like Travis Hunter piece that we don't know what's going to happen with Travis Hunter moving forward. But the fact that you can ask the question, should he play receiver or DB, is a great luxury to have. So you have everything that you need. And I think Trevor Lawrence has everything that he needs to consistently be a borderline like top seven, top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, unfortunately for Lawrence, like unlike Baker entering this season, like he's still gonna have Liam Cohen. Like Grant Udinski was like might get a couple interviews for a head coach, but like obviously with a first round exit and both he and Campanile only like I mean Udinski hasn't even called plays because Liam Cohen is a play caller. So like I don't think we're gonna get a lot of like drainage from the coaching staff where you have to like worry about replacing guys. Or Lawrence is going to have a lot of the same guys around him, both in the coaching staff and then also just in terms of like personnel, his teammates around him, and just I feel like always like another year in the system helps. I think there was actually a quote from like Matt Ryan when he was talking about his like MVP season with Kyle Shanahan, where like it was I believe his third season in Shanahan's system in Atlanta, where like everything finally clicked into place for him. And like obviously that is Kyle Shanahan's system, but it's not like Liam Cohen's system is easy either. Especially with how we're talking about like the offense is going up to the line with 2+ play calls every single play. So it'll be interesting, obviously, to watch Lawrence over the next few years, how much he's able to grow, like where his ceiling really gets capped. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people had questions about like, is he the franchise quarterback? Do the Jaguars regret giving him the contract that they did? But I feel like all of those questions should like go away. And like now I think we can be like, oh, is he ever going to go from like a top 6 to 8 quarterback to a top 3 or 5 quarterback? But that's like first world problems kind of like that's not a hard conversation to have. It's a fun conversation to have. And so definitely feeling good about Trevor Lawrence as we move forward. JP, one more thing on the offense before we move to defense and then potential or upcoming offseason decisions. Jason Miller at JB Miller 26 on X asked, "What's the one tweak that would have made the biggest impact to the offense going forward?" So, if you have a elevator pitch to Liam Cohen and he said, "Hey man, I'm an NFL coach and my offense is good but not great. What should I do to make it unbelievable? What's a tweak or a suggestion that you might have for Liam Cohen's offense?"
I think for where the Jaguars at with this offense, there's still some more that left. There's still more left to be unlocked downfield. And
Yep.
I think a large part of that could be just because of a lack of chemistry between Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr., who is clearly the most explosive receiver on the team. Like that's like without a doubt, Brian Thomas Jr. is the most explosive and the most threatening vertical receiver on the team. But now it's about finding ways to get him involved and get those deep targets unlocked. Because for a large part of the season, you were getting by with just hammering 10 to 15-yard digs. And I think that's a really good way to live. But now, because teams are going to respect those 10 to 15-yard digs, they're going to respect the intermediate area. They're going to start to pull those safeties down. Like when you play a lot of quarters, the safeties are going to hammer down aggressively on those digs. You're going to get plays like the Shaq Thompson interception where they're ready for that dig. You can throw the post behind it. You can throw the deep go route behind it. And that's sort of what I was hoping from the Bills game because the Bills didn't have Maxwell Hairston, who is their fastest defensive back. You would hope to see a little bit more explosive plays for Brian Thomas Jr. But I think also a large part of that was Cole Van Lannon not playing. And you could tell watching back the tape, Trevor Lawrence felt the backside pressure every time. Like he was constantly having to get off the spot and adjust because Walker Little was giving up the outside shoulder pretty quickly. So I think for the Jaguars going into next year, I think getting some more explosive plays for Brian Thomas Jr., getting some downfield shots for Brian Thomas Jr. will be really helpful. And then I think they could use more two back. I
Mm.
think if you get more of your running backs, get as many explosive targets on the field as possible, get Bashal Tootin, get LaQuint Allen on the field as much because they are so versatile. where you can have LaQuint Allen like they against Houston, they would have LaQuint Allen line up as fullback. And I think that's super cool because you can still get that threat of the run game while still forcing defenses to acknowledge that you have two running backs in the game and they can both go downfield and catch passes. So use more two backs, get more explosive downfield, and I think this offense is really going to take off next year.
Definitely would like to see more two back, especially if Travis Etienne returns to the team or if they replace him with another guy that's kind of like a lightning type of running back. I definitely agree with you in terms of like the uh, efficiency and production downfield though, because like we definitely saw Lawrence improve his downfield efficiency in the 8 game winning streak after Jacoby Myers was added and Brenton Strange came back and Parker Washington had his breakout. But a lot of those like downfield plays were like in the 10 to 30, even 10 to 25 range. I think that like we talk about, or like there's kind of a sentiment out there that deep passing efficiency is actually a receiver stat because like for deep passes, like obviously you want to be accurate, but for a lot of time, like you just have to put it in a catchable area, and then it's really up to the receiver to like track the ball, have good body control, finish the play. A lot of passing efficiency numbers downfield come down to how good your receivers are, and I also off of that, I think that downfield production is not a quarterback stat or a receiver stat, but it's an offensive line stat. And the Jaguars this season on throws where they threw the ball at least 40 yards downfield, they ranked last in both attempts with just two and completions with zero. And that seems crazy because you've got Trevor Lawrence who has like a top five strongest arm in the league. You've got Brian Thomas, who's got like a top five vertical threat in the league. So it's like, why is this not happening? It seems kind of juvenile to be like, to say, hey, throw up a moon ball to Brian Thomas and let him run under it. But at the same time, like, we literally haven't even seen them try it. But again, I think it does go back to the offensive line. Bryce Young is another good example of this, I think, where he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL. I know I just said it's a receiver stat, but Bryce is truly excellent at throwing deep balls. But the Panthers are never able to do it because they don't trust their offensive line enough, and they're just not able to get to those plays. Even when we saw Brian Thomas in like that vertical role in the second half of the season, catching a few like contested sideline balls against press coverage, like again, those were all in like the kind of like the 20 to 30-yard pocket. Lawrence was like getting the snap, confirming the coverage, and then at the bottom or the end of his drop, he was getting rid of the ball before the pass rush could arrive. And so those were like still in rhythm chunk plays. And so for sure would like to see them not just be more explosive in terms of 20-yard passes, but in terms of 30, 35, 40-yard passes. And I think it starts with the offensive line. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of decisions they make for that position in the offseason. JP, to switch to defense, Alex Fox on X at Zorro Fierte said, how do you see the Jags addressing the deficiencies in interior pass rush? And before your answer, I will add that Eric Armstead is entering the final year of his contract, and technically the Jaguars can get out of it if they want, but I think it would be so much dead money that like there's no reason not to just keep him around for another year. So, assuming Eric Armstead does remain on the roster, what do you think about just kind of the pass rush moving forward as a whole?
I think this is going to be where James Gladstone makes his money because it's going to be tough, especially with the way they're sort of backed up against the cap. You have some big extensions to give out this year with whatever happens with Devin Lloyd, Travis Etienne, who are both free agents. You have a Parker Washington deal to potentially give out. Brenton Strange, Trayvon Walker is going to be up in line for an extension. So there are a lot of big money deals to be given out. So this is where you have to go to the draft. You have to go and find those bargain bin signings where
Dennis Gardex.
yeah, you got to go find your Dennis Gardex. You got to go like in the draft and get a Danny Strigow and BJ Green. You got to go
Hmm.
find those guys. I think luckily this defensive tackle class is going to be really strong on days 2 and 3. There are going to be specialists where you might be able to say like, oh, this guy might not be the best at like playing on all 3 downs, but if you can have him rotate in on pass rush situations, I think that's where you can start to make your hay. And I think that's where a lot of the great defenses are starting to win. Like you think about Seattle, they can rotate guys in, game out, play in, play out. They rotate at least like three to four defensive tackles in a game. They rotate their edges in and they don't lose a beat. So I think this is where you're going to see a lot of high value like draft positioning. I think you're going to start look for a lot of defensive tackles in the draft because you want to reward the players that have been here. And because Eric Armstead, the dead money is going to be too much to just say like, yeah, we'll cut him. Devon Hamilton might be an interesting conversation, but he was so meaningful to them having the best run defense in the NFL that you could say like, yeah, we'll probably keep him around. But now it starts to come down to drafting and being a good drafter, which is why you bring in James Gladstone in the first place.
Now you mentioned that like in the second and third days there are going to be a variety of body types and like kind of types of defensive tackles. I think like it's kind of obvious to say that the edge room could use a little bit more versatility in terms of the types of bodies there. They've got a lot of thumpers and a lot of like big bulky guys, I feel like between Hines Allen, Walker, BJ Green, Strigow, Gardeck, even like Ogba and Smoot, like when they were signed and played a decent amount at the beginning of the season, they've got a lot of big bodies and like obviously defense coordinators like that because it'll help in the run game to contain edges. But in terms of the interior specifically for defensive tackle, are there any like specific body types, even specific names that you think it would be smart for the Jaguars to go after?
Well, when you think of where Anthony Campanelli comes from in Green Bay, they have a lot of lighter bodies
Mhm.
on the defensive tackle side. Like you think of like Devontae Wyatt, who's maybe like teetering around 300 pounds. Colby Wooden is around 296. I think their two biggest defensive tackles are like maybe 315, and they're both like seventh round rookies in Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson. So I think going into the draft, I'm thinking of guys like maybe a Zane Durant from Penn State, who's a little undersized at like 280 pounds. But when you talk about upfield quickness, he's getting up the field in a hurry. I think that's where you could see a lot of impact from a pass rush perspective. I think David Oke from Arkansas is another guy that's going to be undersized, but he can win as a pass rusher in sub package situations. I think that's also where, like, if you continue to extend Trayvon Walker and play Trayvon Walker on the interior, that's where, like, maybe your sub package rusher is Trayvon Walker, and then you play Gardeck or Strigow, or maybe you add another versatile body type as a pass rusher. You can go out and add some speed. I think there's some speed on the edge in this class. I don't think they're going to draft edge early with their first couple of picks, but you think of guys like Cassius Howell or R. Mason Thomas from Texas A&M and Oklahoma who can win with speed, who are able to win with that fluidity. I think Kenyatta Jackson Jr. is also the same way. So I think there are going to be guys on days 2 and day 3 of the draft that you can really use to turn up this pass rush. But it just comes down to prioritize how you prioritize the guys that are here and how that informs where you lack in the draft.
That is a perfect segue. Well, first of all, thanks for all those names because I've done absolutely zero NFL 2026 draft prep. So those would definitely be the first names that I'm looking up. But also, you mentioned in terms of prioritizing the guys that they have here, and Trayvon Walker is eligible for a contract extension, but is yet to get one, which I can only assume means two things. One, which is much more likely, is just that he wants more money than the Jaguars have offered, and they're kind of just at a stalemate in that regard. That makes sense. That happens every year for every team. But also, like maybe there a chance that the Jaguars are just like remaining flexible because whenever Trayvon Walker signs his contract, it's going to be a very large one. I think probably even bigger than the one that Josh Hines Allen signed, just because of the way that like the cap has grown in recent years. And so someone asked on Blue Sky, Steven at Bad Person 69, Max Crosby? Question mark, JP? What do you think are the odds are that like they make a big swing for like Crosby? I mean, at this point, I don't think Miles Garrett's going to get traded for Cleveland, but like, do you think, like, do you hear what I'm saying? Like the Brian Windhorst meme, like maybe they haven't extended Walker because they're like still want to have the possibility of trading for a Max Crosby or someone that would have a massive contract? Or do you think that like Max Crosby is not coming to Jacksonville and Trayvon Walker will be here for 10 plus years?
I think it's more likely that they're waiting to get a deal done with Trayvon Walker. I'm very curious what happens between the trio of Trayvon Walker, Travis Etienne, and Devin Lloyd.
Mm,
Because if I had my guess now, they extend Walker, they tag Lloyd, and Etienne, unfortunately, is the odd man out.
mm,
But I could also see I could see a possibility where they're like, we can't settle for what this was, and they go out and make a big deal for Crosby. But once you do that, your future for the next again for the next 10 plus years, you gotta continue to revamp that defensive line and get some more youth on that team because Max Crosby also coming off meniscus surgery, not really like the youngest guy at this point, but he would immediately turn up your pass rush. I mean, you could also look at a guy like Trey Hendrickson, who is going to be a free agent this year. Like maybe he comes in and is sort of like a mercenary, where you can go and sign him to like the same sort of deal that the Commanders gave Von Miller or something. Like maybe you can go out and get a guy like Hendrickson to turn up your pass rush. But I don't think this is. I don't think they're going to go out and make a big deal like Max Crosby. I think it'll be more along like the lines of maybe like Hendrickson wants to come down.
That'd be pretty cool. I almost feel like the Travis Hunter deal like prevents them from making another huge deal because like you don't want to mortgage like so many assets into just like two players, even if they were the two best players in the sport. I mean, maybe at that point it'd be worth it, but yeah, it's just then the roster would be built out of so many like great guys and like barely rosterable guys, I feel like, instead of just having good depth, good players, like rosterable players throughout the depth chart. But obviously that'll be interesting to monitor Trayvon's contract situation, but also Parker Washington's contract situation. I think a lot of people are going to be in the boat of like, when is the Parker Washington deal going to happen? It should be any day now. But you did, JP, mention that you would give Devin Lloyd the franchise tag, which stands out to me a little bit just because the franchise tag number is large. It's not just because I'm pretty sure the way the league does it now is that like linebacker franchise tag numbers are kind of the average between linebackers and outside linebackers to account more for people who pass the rusher from that position. And so off the top of my head, I think the franchise tag number would be 27 or 28 million for a single season for Devin Lloyd. You're comfortable with that?
I think so, especially if you're giving Walker the extension. I could see it flipped where they give Lloyd the extension, Walker the tag. But I think you have to keep Devin Lloyd around mainly because playing linebacker in the NFL is really freaking hard.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy to replace a guy like Devin Lloyd who the game is finally slowed down for. And he made such an impact this season. I think he was one of the only players in the NFL. I think he was the only off-ball linebacker in the NFL with 5+ intercept or like multiple interceptions and multiple like pressures, like 10+ pressures on the
Hmm.
pass rush as a pass rusher. So I think with a guy like that, when you play the way that this Jaguars team does and the physicality and the ability to shut down the middle of the field, I think retaining Devin Lloyd is going to matter so much because you can draft a rookie linebacker if you want, but it's going to take a minute for the game to really slow down for a rookie, as we've seen with Devin Lloyd. So I think rewarding the players that have been here is going to matter a lot. So either way it goes, I could see them tagging Devin Lloyd. I could see them tagging Trayvon Walker, but I think either way, it sort of leans to me that those two guys will be here, and then I feel unfortunately that ETN's probably going to be the odd man out.
Yeah, especially with Tootin, like even if he didn't get a second half touch, like he looked as good as you would want for a fourth round rookie when he wasn't injured this season. And so I think it kind of makes sense to let him go, let Tootin kind of like give him the chance to run the show, and then you can always like just draft a guy on day three or pick up on whoever on the like the next Rico Dowdle or like this next season's Rico Dowdle. I agree with you in terms of everything you said about Devin Lloyd. Like it's just about the like contract to me. Like I feel like if they were gonna give him the tag, like they might as well just sign him to a long-term deal and like they can front load it if they want to. But I definitely think he's invaluable to the defense, specifically Campanile's defense. And like it's not like the running back where like you have Tootin waiting in the wings and like it's a fairly easable, replaceable position. And I think that what Devin Lloyd has done this year is much, much harder to replace than what ETN has done. So yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap. Sorry to everyone who we didn't get questions to or answered, but appreciate everyone who reached out. Maybe I'll go through everything that we didn't hit on today on the next podcast, but I'll be back at some point. Probably next week. We'll see, but we'll definitely still be churning out content on here on the Duval 22 podcast feed and over at duval22.com. So make sure to Keep an eye out for Jaguars analysis here. Keep an eye out for JP's work as always over at CBS Sports. JP, thanks again so much for your time. I don't know if you have any final takes to get off your chest about the Jaguars as we enter the offseason or anything, any work that you want to plug over at CBS.
Oh yeah, of course. Always listen to Pushing the Pile. That's a podcast I co-host. We have shows every Tuesday. Thursday we'll have Sunday recaps for the playoff games. We'll be on CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network later today, and I'll be on TV, talking about football wherever the football is being played. I'm going to be there, but you best believe I will be talking Jaguars, and I am very, very excited for what's coming.
So am I. Thank you, everyone, for not just listening to this show, but for following along the entire season. It's been a great one, despite the sudden ending, but it'll be a great 2026. Until next time, thanks again. Thank you again, JP, for the eighth time. Adios, everyone.